The Arizona Corporation Commission offers the first official step in forming a business in Arizona. You, the entrepreneur, are the most important step to inspire your dream. My pleasure to be joined today by Kelly Minkin, professional poker player, ranked #1 female in Arizona on the all-time money list. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay, good. I want to start off very casually and put you at ease here. Tell me about the most intense experience you've had at a poker table.
Well, I've had a lot of intense experiences, but I would say the most intense was the 2015 World Series main event. There were 29 people left, with first place being a little over $8 million. And I busted in a terrible fashion and then had all the ESPN cameras swarm me for an interview, and all I wanted to do was cry in a corner. And it was just like really devastating for me because it caught me off guard thinking that I was gonna win, and then when my opponent turned his hand over and I saw that I had a 0% chance of winning, that was terrible for me.
Have you always been good at math?
No, I wouldn't say I've always been good at math. I think that when you're able to apply math to something that you're passionate about, it makes it a lot easier to retain that information.
Should we be using poker in the schools to teach kids about math?
You know, it's funny you say that because earlier today I had a phone call with the headmaster of a private school in Massachusetts, and we're going to work together and collaborate to form a class that teaches math through poker.
Very good. So now take us back. When did you first play poker? When did you fall in love with the game? When did you know that this was something that you were going to pursue?
While I was in law school, I started playing poker after school, mostly out of boredom and partially out of the competitive nature of the game. So once I started playing, I felt like I could be successful at playing poker. So once I knew that I had like a natural knack for it, I worked on my game, I studied, I watched videos and used that information to become better.
Walk us through that. What was it? What experience did you have where you were able to sit back and say, I'm good at this?
Well, you know, it's hard to do that in poker, right? Because you can be a terrible poker player and be profitable. It's not likely, but it's possible, right? So just because you have success in poker doesn't necessarily mean you're good or you're skilled.
What's the difference between having success and being skilled? Walk me through the...
So in poker, you can be making the most optimal decisions at all time and still lose because there's an element of chance involved in the game. And that's what draws a lot of people to poker, because the top players don't always end up on the top. Sometimes you get some guys who get through the cracks and end up at the top when they're maybe outclassed, and they still have an opportunity of winning. So I think that your skill set helps you to become great and to make money, but it doesn't secure that spot, if that makes sense.
While you were saying that, your tone and your body language all became very relaxed,
Yeah.
which is interesting to me because you do that at the table too.
Yeah.
It's almost like in describing that, you just went into this zone, and it's the same thing that I see as you play. Is that, how are you preparing yourself to sit down? Are you finding a zen? Is that what this is? Do you meditate? Kelly Minkin, do you meditate? What's going on?
I try to meditate, yeah. I think that having some mental clarity before you play and when you play helps you make optimal decisions. And that's all that it comes down to. When you're playing poker, when you're in a game, you want to be making the best decision every decision you make. And so to do that, you have to limit the emotions, you have to limit external stress, and you have to be able to, blur all that other information out and just focus on what you know you need to do.
How much of your success do you attribute to getting into that mind frame?
I would say that is a big part of my success, in that I have a way of controlling my emotions and keeping my head balanced. And when I lose a big pot or I lose a lot of money, I'm able to not let it affect my future decision making.
Bounce back.
Yes, bounce back. I'm really good at that.
What makes a good poker player? Let's go into more generalities. What are the skills and what are the attributes as you've met talented players throughout your career?
Well, I think, like we tapped into earlier, that emotional discipline is so imperative to being successful. No matter what other skills you have, if you can't keep your emotions in check, you should not play poker, period. If you're not able to be angry and upset and not act on those emotions, or you want to feel cocky because you won a huge pot and you have a bunch of money in front of you and you can't wind that down to stay focused, you're never going to be successful.
A number of people that have connected with us over this series have been in a tough spot when they've watched this. And the goal of these videos is to inspire wherever someone is in the path, but oftentimes they're at rock bottom. So let's talk about playing a bad hand. Describe your experience in being successful with a bad hand, and what are your thoughts on how you do more with less?
So I've had bad hands that I've played and taken probably farther than I should have. Occasionally it does work out, and this one hand I played recently on Poker Night in America is a show on CBS Sports.
What was your hand?
I had 7 deuce off, which is the worst possible starting hand in poker. It was a pot that was raised, and I was in the small blind with this hand, and I re-raised, and the other opponent in the hand re-raised me. So now this puts me in a really tough spot because I have a terrible hand. I'm playing against someone out of position, which gives me another disadvantage, and I decide that I can get my opponent to fold if I show strength. And that strength, it doesn't matter what my hand is. It matters what she thinks that I have, right? So I decide to just shove all in for $10,000, which is very risky. But I was confident in the fact that I made it seem as though I was very strong and I could get a lot of hands that beat me to fold. So I shoved all in. My opponent thought for a very long time. And while she was thinking, I also projected that I was strong. Like you noticed, I relaxed in my chair. I was talking to her. I wanted it to seem like I was very comfortable.
What did you say?
I said, I'll show you my hand. Don't worry, I'll show you even if you decide not to call. So she ends up folding ace-king suited, which is a very good hand, and I showed her 7 deuce. And
what was her reaction?
She wasn't happy with me. She was not happy, but
she got played.
She got played, and the lesson learned here, and from someone in her position, is that she let her emotions get the best of her, and that affected her play from that moment moving forward. So I think it ended up like frazzling her a little bit.
Your confidence wasn't in your hand. What was your confidence in? My
confidence was in the fact that I was fairly confident I could get her to fold a hand that she was re-raising me with. Now, I didn't know she had ace-king suited, and if at that time I knew that, I may have not made that decision, but it worked out. Yeah. So that's part of the luck that's involved in poker is, getting people to do things that they probably shouldn't have done, given the, percentages based on how much money she had already put in the middle, but she made a mistake, and that was profitable for me.
What's the difference between confidence and cocky?
That's a good question. I would say being confident in poker isn't about being vocal about how good you are. It's about being confident in the decision-making process, which is all internal, right? You don't want to be, puffing your chest out and acting like you're better than everyone else, because then to me, it throws you off what the main focus is, which is to make good decisions, and focus on being profitable. So when you're, playing a character and playing like, I'm better than everyone, or I'm playing better than everyone, it doesn't really work towards what your long-term goal is, which is to win.
Now, you're an attorney.
Yes.
You're an attorney that has a completely separate life.
Yes.
So it's sort of like a superhero.
I guess you could say that. I consider myself just a normal person, and I think that if I can do, things that I'm passionate about in multiple different avenues, that anyone can do that. It's just a matter of being confident in yourself and being confident enough to take that leap.
Let's talk about lessons from poker that are applicable in everyday life. So first of all, you've got a not-for-profit that you're working on to teach high school kids. What lessons would you give them if they want to be an entrepreneur, a better student? What are the lessons in poker?
The first thing I would tell people is to take advantage of every opportunity presented to you, whether that mean information or an actual opportunity to make money. So in poker, there's a lot of information that's on the table, right, that a lot of people don't take advantage of. How your opponents look, how they're acting, how they're betting, what they're betting, how they play their cards. And so if you are able to pay attention to those things, you have an opportunity to become more successful than everybody else by using that information to your advantage.
Are you good at reading people?
Yes, I think I'm very good at reading people.
So what's your thought process there? Do you break people up into categories? Tell me how that works.
There are certain categories, but it really amounts to being adaptable at the table. You have to adapt to your circumstances. So, I can sit at a table and there's 4 players that are really tight and they're not playing a lot of hands, and then 4 players that are playing a ton of hands, and that can all vary far and few between. So you have to be ready to make game time decisions, is what I like to call it, and decisions in that moment with all the information that's given to you at that time, and that varies from hand to hand.
Now let's talk about the applications of poker for the legal world, for the business world. What lessons have you learned, and what can you tell us?
I think poker helps a lot with the negotiating process because it helps you to naturally think about what your opponent is thinking. You're thinking and what your opponent wants, which are very important things to consider when you're negotiating with someone. So for example, I was in a negotiating conference, and I used the poker skill of trying to determine what your opponent wants. So I was in a situation where I tried to explain to the other attorneys and legal professionals in that room that in a settlement conference, you have to not only think about what our goals are, but what your opponent's goals are. And how do we make our opponent feel like they've won when we've really won? And that's what it comes down to, is making your opponent think what you want them to think. And so that all becomes part of the story you want to tell. And you tell a story by giving off certain information. So when we counter on an offer, we want to make it seem like we have a limit. And so by trying to portray a limit, that's all about the amount that you offer and strategically determining how that amount adjusts based on their counter.
You went to school in Arizona?
Yes.
You work in Arizona?
Yes.
You travel around the world and come back home to Arizona?
Absolutely. I think Arizona will always be my home. My family's here. I have a solid foundation. I like the people. I think I have a great network of friends as well. So, I was raised here. I'm planning on, keep staying here and being with my family.
Who are your mentors, and who do you credit your success to?
I think that when you are in an industry where everyone is competitive and everyone is your opponent in a sense, that it's really hard to find a mentor. I was able to grab a small group of people that help me, but it really comes down to being self-motivated. And I do that through constant internal dialogue with myself and trying to understand how I can be better and how I can do better for myself. So I think that if you are in a competitive atmosphere where you feel like you can't reach out to others for help, that you really have to find that motivation in yourself and be driven to succeed by using the information around you and the materials around you to better yourself.
Special thanks to Kelly Minkin for joining us today on Inspire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Create your business entity by filing with us to create a corporation, nonprofit, or LLC. Visit ecorp.azcc.gov to learn more.
Population.
Kelly back at it, all in with ace 10, rendering her unbluffable to Mark Kroon with jack 8 of diamonds.
I believe this is the second time Mark has
Kelly
been the
Minkin's
last
an attorney
Kroon
from
standing.
Phoenix.
Yeah, like I'm going to trust a lawyer in a hoodie.
This is her fourth cash of this World Series. From Stockholm, Kelly Minkin is well over $1 million.
Well, she's been taking advantage of someone's poker malpractice.
Maria was the last woman standing in the 07 and 2014 main events. Kelly Minkin trying to accomplish that and more. All in with Queens.
No, he did not.
No, I didn't have that.
He never has anything beat.
I said, if I had
Maybe King Jack.
Kelly over $1 million chips now. A wink and a smile, and more chips heading her way. She's making a case for herself, but still a long way to go, counselor.